My name is Roberta Suhlman, and I'm the chair of the Open Space and Recreation Committee and the moderator for Part 2. Before we get started on some of the business with regard to the candidates' debate, I wanted to remind you all that Saturday, May 4th, is Green Up Ashland Day. And so the committee is looking for event volunteers and participants. The event starts at 9 o'clock in the morning at Stone Park Pavilion and goes until 12 noon. And refreshments and trash bags and t-shirts will be provided at registration. So pick a street that you want to clean up, or they'll assign you a street to clean up. But it's a wonderful way to be outside, to do something with other folks, and to also help beautify the town. So please volunteer for Green Up Ashland Day, and if you have any questions, go to greenupashland.org. I want to welcome you all to Part 2 of the Candidates Forum for the Planning Board and for the Ashland Board of Selectmen. Full disclosure, I know some of these folks, having worked with them on different committees, and I just know some of them from hanging around town and doing all kinds of things. The purpose of tonight's debate is for you. It's to help you become informed before you make your choice at the ballot box in a couple of weeks. As Jay Griffiths, the British author, said, being adequately informed is a democratic duty, just as the vote is a democratic right. A misinformed electorate voting without knowledge is not a true democracy. And that's why we're here tonight, because residents deserve thoughtful and well-informed candidates who can explain themselves, who can answer questions, who can state what their positions are on various issues, and who are informed and can then, after they vote, hold their elected officials accountable. So that's what tonight is all about. I hope that you brought questions with you, because we'll have time for you to stand in line and ask your questions after I do 3 introductory questions, first to the Planning Board, and then we'll take questions from the public, and then we'll switch over to the Board of Selectmen. I'll ask 3 questions again, and we'll take more questions from the public. If the public runs out of questions, I have more questions that I can go back and ask. So we'll have plenty of time to do all of that as well. I want to thank the co-sponsors and organizers of today's event. It's not easy to take on something like this to do. It's a lot of work. And I want to thank the We Love Ashland group and Kathy Rooney, Friends of the Ashland Library and Betsy Emberley, and other volunteers who were involved, Judson DeCou, Yolanda Greaves, Diane Ring, Lisa Ugliaro, and Cynthia Whitty. I want to thank the Ashland Public Library, the crew at WACA who's been filming this today, and it's being live streamed on WACA-TV. I want to also thank our candidates, not only for being here this evening, but for choosing to spend their time potentially serving the town. It's time-consuming, it requires learning a lot, it's a deep commitment of time, and we really appreciate it. I want to thank Adam Elbert, Brandy Kinsman, Joe Magnani, Jane Stefanini, Kate Jerzik, and Tricia Kendall for stepping up and stepping forward to run for election. The debate rules are exactly as they were for Part 1. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer a question. If there is a request for rebuttal, those will be 30 seconds. And the moderator has the discretion to ask a follow-up question if either the response wasn't clear or the response didn't get to the heart of what the question was really asking. When you come up to speak in line, please use the microphone. Otherwise, people not only in this room, but at home watching on WACA won't hear you. The microphone is amplifying not only for in here, but it's amplifying for television as well. Should you be moved to applaud, let's hold that till the very end so that we don't take up any time from asking questions with applause. We'll give everyone a big round of applause, including everybody who was here for Part 1. We'll do that at the end tonight. I don't think I have to tell anyone, because everyone was perfectly civil and respectful during the first part, but should anything get any contentious or heated, we still want to stay civil and respectful to each other. Okay, So the planning board, we're going to start with opening remarks. And those opening remarks are 2 minutes apiece. And first, we're going to hear from Kate Jerzyk.
Thank you to the Ashland Library, the Friends of Ashland Library. We love Ashland, WACA-TV, Roberta Sullivan, the moderator, and the efforts of many of my fellow citizens for this candidates forum. My name is Catherine Jerzyk. You might know me from around town as Kate, and I'm running for planning board. I'm running because government is participatory, and this is an area I have a lot to offer. My family introduced me to the importance of civic engagement at an early age, and it's a value I carry into adulthood. Serving on the planning board is a great way to achieve broader civic engagement, working together to build a town that makes us proud, and create a democratic process that values everyone's contributions and opinions. Working on your behalf, I will pursue planning ahead. I will advocate to update Ashland's comprehensive plan. With the community behind it, the plan makes it easier for developers to bring projects to town with citizen support. And if we elect people committed to following the plan, we don't have to worry if our collective interests are being represented each time a particular project comes up. I will pursue equitable processes. I will enlist neighborhoods, developers, and experts to create a viable system for ongoing reevaluation of Ashland zoning, giving Ashland a system we deserve, based on an open, publicized, and well-understood process. I will pursue civic engagement. I will engage the community so the public understands the importance of zoning and how it impacts our homes and our neighborhoods. I have more than 20 years performing various roles involving planning construction projects. I know that details are important and context is equally important. Focusing on one without the other will likely lead to problems. The planning board needs to look at both, and I'm trained to always evaluate the details, understanding the setting as well. Whether you already know me or meeting me for the first time, I hope to earn your vote. Luckily for me, you don't have to know how to spell my name to vote for me. Please look for the last name starting with a J under the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Tricia Kendall.
Hi, my name is Tricia Kendall. I was originally born in Iowa and came out to Massachusetts in 91 to attend graduate school. Ended up just loving the state like so many people do, and have now lived in Massachusetts for longer than I did in Iowa, so it really feels like my home state now. I came out to study architecture, and I am a registered architect in the state of Massachusetts. My office is just down on Pleasant Street, and so that's really what I am. It's not only in my profession, but the way I see the world, looking at communities, looking at houses, looking at anything really to see how it's designed from a detail level to the big picture. My husband and I have lived in Ashland itself for 14 years now. We have 2 children in the school systems. And at first when we lived here, it was just the 2 of us, and we were it was kind of a bedroom community to us. We commuted into the city and didn't know a lot about Ashland. But once kids started coming along, we started to spend a lot more time here and started to get really involved. We noted the really exciting things happening in Ashland, from the farmers market that was still really in planning stages at that point, hadn't actually started. The sustainability committee, which actually was just coming from a green community committee, and what we saw was a lot of hope and promise for the community that we just wanted to be involved in. So I see my role now on the planning board is something that I can really bring my particular skills to as an architect, and to start to look at Ashland in a design kind of way about where we want to bring Ashland into the future.
Okay, thank you. Here's the first question, and we're just gonna, I'll start with Kate, and then the next question I'll start with Tricia. So the first question. In the recent past, there have been proposed development projects which have met with opposition from the neighborhood. For example, Robert Hill Way, 133 West Union, the Rail Transit District, 128 Main Street, and the Dunkin' Donuts on Pond Street. The planning board reviews projects and rules on their compliance with all applicable laws. The residents often want to protect the character of the town and sometimes their neighborhood specifically. If elected, what would you do to try to prevent these conflicts? And how would you try to fairly reconcile developers' rights and the rights of Ashland's residents? Kate?
So I think people who know me know I do stand for public involvement, and I think some of these projects that have had opposition are that we didn't do our best job involving the public and communicating with them early on. And that led to just disappointment and problems with them. So I think if we work to get a better process of establishing a way for people to have input early on, that will help. And I also think this is where community outreach and understanding is very important, because there are certain things that are very prescriptive by the planning board. It either meets the zoning or not, and the planning board should be following the zoning. That's why you elect them. That's why we have zoning, and that's why we should have a very good process to change zoning, which I think we've fallen a little bit out of that and maybe haven't kept up. So I think that would help with those issues. And then, again, educating the public, there are certain things that are just allowed by property rights, by state law. And if people understand them, I think that will help understand when the planning board can make different decisions. And lastly, involving the public on any project still will bring out many issues that maybe just the 5 people on the planning board hadn't thought of. So we absolutely need the public involved.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Tricia?
Yeah, I agree with many of the things Kate said. It's really important to understand that there are certain things that a property owner in a democratic country can do by right as long as they are following the existing zoning regulations. Now, it's our job as a community to decide under state regulations as well, of course, but to understand what we want as our local regulations and our local zoning. As an architect, I work in many different communities and have to study their zoning bylaws, all the different things that they have that try to govern their communities so that they can grow and develop in a way that they feel proud of, that they like. And I think this is something that Ashland is starting to do, but probably needs to take a closer look at in these areas, especially in downtown, along 126, areas that we're really thinking that have possibilities for development. And what do we want them to be as a community? How do we want those areas to be areas that we can be proud of as they develop into things that also can help our community economically?
Okay, thank you, Tricia. And Tricia, we're going to start with you with this next question. To reduce greenhouse gas emissions affecting climate change, California recently passed an ordinance to mandate solar panels on all new residential construction. The ordinance was supported by the development community. While ideally such a law would be passed nationally, or at least at the state level, and Ashland certainly may have less available solar than California, do you think it would be a good idea for Ashland to implement a similar or like bylaw? And if not, are there other zoning bylaws or building codes you would support to help the town reduce the carbon footprint of the municipality, businesses, and residences in town?
I'm a big supporter of sustainability. Not only did I serve as the chair of the Sustainability Committee for several years, I actually just only recently came off of that committee, mostly to allow some fresh blood on the committee, and I think they're doing a wonderful job. But to offer myself to other opportunities, like on the planning board. I have solar panels on my own house. I love them. And I'm also trained as an architect. I'm LEED accredited, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, so it actually really is a part of my practice. So I strongly believe in using those kind of resources. Now that said, things like solar power can only really be used on certain buildings and certain residences that are oriented in the proper direction. You can't just put them on every building and have it be effective. Our house was lucky. We had perfect solar south orientation for those panels. But if you look at a lot of the rooftops, as you drive around different neighborhoods, they're not oriented in the right direction, or the rooftops are too complicated with things like dormers, and so it just can't be done. As we look toward future regulations, I do believe in having incentives that would make people think more carefully about planning their houses and residences to accommodate that kind of energy efficient construction.
I'm going to ask a quick follow-up here. Are there any zoning bylaws or ordinances or building codes that you would seek to change or pass so that it's more than an incentive, it's a requirement?
Well, right now, Massachusetts does have where all new residential construction has to be solar-ready, that it has to be able to bear the structural load of having solar panels, which is a good thing. I don't think there's anything at this time that I would put on top of what's already there. We already have the stretch code for energy efficiency. We already have houses being solar-ready. But I do think there are things that we can look toward. I'm not ready to say we should everything I know about zoning, that we should kind of blanket one particular policy at this time.
Okay, one last time. Do you want to be specific about what some of those things might be that you think we should look at?
Well, sure, there could be things about water use, I think is a big one, and how do we save water? Some of those things are already in effect. We could look at the insulation codes again about making them even more stringent than they are. I think there's always a level that we can push things to, but I don't think it can't be done. It has to be done carefully instead of in a way kind of greenwashing. These things are more complicated than it seems, and they have ripple effects, and so we have to look at it more carefully than just putting one regulation out there.
Thank you. We're being told to stop. To stop. Thank you very much for answering that in detail. Kate?
So the Ashland having a sustainability committee, when we did that committee and some of the things they've done, meant a lot to me, because it's something I'm proud to say we have in our community. And to comment on specifically like solar panels like California, I think that's a very broad community discussion that needs to happen. And I think that we should work toward looking at all of those things. And our comprehensive plan right now is dated 2003. And unfortunately, we've abandoned a system to have ongoing updates. But these are some of the things: greenhouse gases, solar panels, newer zoning. Would we like tiny houses? I mean, I could give you reasons to have that. I could give you reasons not to. It's not up to me. It's up to our community. So I would say all of these things should and need to be discussed, and we need to have a plan, a program, how people can discuss them and engage people for them.
Okay. I'll also ask you a brief follow-up. Given the fact that before any community decision is made, the community would need to have that conversation, what do you personally like in terms of specific items to look at?
Well, I do tend to agree with Trish. I really can't put solar panels in my house unless I cut down a big, beautiful tree, and my neighbors would not be happy. And I could maybe look at the solar array in the backyard, but right now that's not allowed by zoning. So I think the Sustainability Committee and a Sustainability Coordinator can try to keep us at the forefront of looking at other options. But to mandate solar panels, I think, would be very difficult. And there's definitely lots of things I think on building I would love to see. I would love to see universal design mandatory, right? That's somewhat related to this topic as well. But we need a lot of community input and conversations.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with Kate again. Residential development, business development, taxes, traffic congestion, school overcrowding, water shortages, and climate change are all interconnected, even though we often act as if they are separate problems worked on by separate town boards and committees and departments. The town has been without an approved comprehensive plan for more than a decade. But as Lewis Carroll wrote, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. As a leader in town, where do you think we should be going? And what ideas do you have to ensure that Ashland has a town-wide, coordinated, and bold comprehensive plan?
I definitely stand for updating the comprehensive plan. I've talked about it well before I decided to run for the planning board. that is something that's extremely important. That is our roadmap. So the 2003 plan has some things we've accomplished. It has some things we haven't accomplished, but it has not kept up. And we did have a committee that was alongside of the planning board, which I think would probably be the best way to handle that, is have a separate committee to have ongoing updates. Because the plan sitting on the shelf is not going to help anyone either. It's not worth the time or the resources of anybody to make a comprehensive plan if we don't have a commitment to use it and update it. So specific things, I really just want a plan. I think, sounds like Trish and I agree on this, and we have similar ideas of that's very important.
Tricia?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think anyone is going to say that having a plan as you go into the future is a bad thing. So we can just take that as a given that both Kate and I agree that a plan is needed, and a lot of input is going to be needed to get there. Personally, I think that plan should really involve a balance between development of space for economic reasons and also the preservation of our open spaces and green spaces. So how do we make those choices in a smart way? And I think smart is part of the new phrase for Ashland. How do we start to use the space that we have in a way that can help us academically, that can help us to grow as a community and with the services and things that we need and that we would like to have handy as a community. But also, how do we preserve the things that have been here for a long time and that we love? One of the reasons that we stay in Ashland and want to be involved in Ashland, things like the farmers market, like the trail coming in, like the state park, like the corner spot. You know, how do we create those things in town so we really have a balance between development and non-development? And that would be what I'd be looking for in that comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone who has any questions they'd like to ask?
Hi, in case nobody knows, I'm Chuck Litt. So I remember many years ago, Lynn and I were moving to Maine, and we were looking for a house, and we ended up talking to a developer who told me, just coincidentally, that if she faced the houses south, irrespective of where the road was, if she faced the houses south, she saved 20% of the energy. And correspondingly, I mean, I understand about not being able to put solar panels on roofs that are already existing, but is there some reason we shouldn't have a similar rule in Ashland?
Who would you like to take that, have that question first? Okay, so Tricia, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, as a LEED accredited designer, so mostly I focus on residences in my practice, both new homes and additions. And as someone trained in that and accredited in that, I'm always looking for how I can help that home, that existing home or the new homes, energy efficiency and make it just a better place. That said, there's a lot of constraints that go into making a house. There's more about the house than just the road. There's the site, the view, the prevailing winds, the interesting house features, the features of the site. I mean, and as an architect, I always start with the site. So south is one of those things, but having all houses face south may not just work with the site, because that's one feature of the site and not every feature of the site. So there's many ways that we can approach that building to make it energy efficient and to use solar as best it can without necessarily that every house has to be the same and have the same orientation.
Kate?
So I think I can imagine that having that requirement could actually not fit with some of our current roadways and things as well, the orientation and how you'd have to, would you make a bigger driveway, would you use more resources? So I applaud our town and the people here that are taking this issue really seriously. That makes me really proud. making a requirement about that on housing, I don't see as practical.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Thanks, Ryan Turncliffe, 21 Rossi Lane. Thank you both for running for Planning Board. Just as a heads up, I'm going to have the same question for the Board of Selectmen candidates later. One of the things that I'd like to see in our town is better coordinated and communication, or coordinated discussion and communication across boards, particularly between the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen, and the Finance Committee. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you might facilitate that or actions you might take to encourage that communication across boards.
Okay, Kate?
So in a large sense, I think this is created to have that, and it came out of maybe some different boards not understanding who might have supported or how much negotiations were done on a subject. So there's a subcommittee started currently with the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, I believe the Conservation Commission, and the best I can tell, Steve Mitchell gets quite a bit of credit for being the one kind of insisting. I think over the years I've heard him talk about that, but now I believe that's happening. So I think that subcommittee should meet. They should have a way to disseminate information to a larger group, to the public. And I think that theme is coming through clear from the questions, from the and the community, that communication is an issue that is probably something that Ashland is not very good at. And so I think lots of systems like that, but I applaud the current subcommittee that is well on its way to attacking that problem.
Thank you. Tricia?
Yeah, I agree that communication between the committees and different boards is important. As part of the Sustainability Committee, when I chaired that, we made a special effort, which I know is ongoing, to connect with all kinds of different boards to work toward mutual goals, and there's a lot of them out there. So one of the reasons I'm interested in taking kind of this next step, this would be my first elected office to be on Planning Board, is that I already know a lot of the players, and I think if you're involved in any part of Ashland and its different committees, you get to know the players very quickly and as a part of our town. And so I think there's a natural kind of collaboration as you get to know people and that you want to work together. So I'm really actually looking forward to that part, to see how we can use the different strengths of the different committees to work together to make 1 + 1 = 3 when we're really working toward very similar goals.
Thank you. Please identify yourself when you come up. Pull it down. No, just you can tilt the microphone down.
There we go. I'm Irene Katalichenko from AHS, and I have a question that someone asked. They asked to Adam Elbert, during your campaign, you have said that you wanted to move Ashland forward. What do you stand for, not
Well,
against?
This is the planning
Oh,
board.
my
Adam's
bad.
for the selectmen, okay? You want to come next? Is this a planning board question?
Yep.
Okay, great. Identify yourself, please.
Adora Light, AHS student as well. So how can we encourage and incentivize developers to do projects in Ashland that are both economically feasible, meaning they'll actually get done, while also retaining the character and charm that makes Ashland special?
Great question. Tricia, you want to start?
Yeah, I think
And
that-
she fit it all on a Post-it, too.
Yeah,
It's
I
amazing.
noticed that. She's very efficient herself. I think that is the big question, right? We have a certain set of values, I think, that we want to outline into a specific policy. Some communities, say Newton, has a zoning regulation that's 60 pages long when you go to put in any kind of residence, gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they have a lot of good ideas in there about how to how to control the character that we're building things that we actually like. Now, how we get developers also to be, I want to follow those regulations and come into Ashland, I think is a little bit trickier question, right? If we make regulations so that the community grows the way we want, how can we also attract in the kind of businesses that we want? And I think that's where the collaboration between different parts of of the town government, the town manager and economic development director, how we work together to bring in those type of resources to Ashland. I think it's a really kind of the question of the future, really.
Do you have any follow-up, or you're okay?
Oh, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Kate.
So I think there's lots of things we can do, and I think one of the things is starting with a fairly well-developed plan, because you're already putting out your roadmap, what you'd like, and they can see if that suits what their type of building is or not. I think we can consider public-private partnerships, and I know that's for a town the size of Ashland, maybe that's not practical, but we can at least look at it. And we have, we've done a roadmap of that, setting aside certain amount of money for helping businesses downtown. So it's not a pie in the sky thing, but it would take some work to get there. I think we can look at things. We have an economic development person looking at like putting parcels together that make them more developer. And I think we just work and make relationship with developers. We know, I've heard from people in town that have had people that have, they can see the downtown vision that maybe fits with what we want to retain character. So I think there's lots of things, and I would be excited to be on a committee to help move that forward.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Go ahead.
Hi, Toby
Question.
Fink, Ashland High School student.
Identify yourself, please.
Oh, sorry. Toby Fink, Ashland High School student. This is a question someone asked for the planning board and for selectmen, so maybe keep that in mind for later. They asked, what is your position on the projected Eversource pipeline?
Okay, Kate.
So I went to a public forum at the selectmen's meeting and heard a professor speaking that really gave a lot of information to say we need to do a better job of examining if this is actually needed. And a lot of those decisions are well above even something I could weigh in on. It goes through the State Utilities Commission. But Ashland absolutely needs to step up and make sure we understand the limits of anything we can do to say, is that really needed or not? I also think personally, and I'm sure there's lots of people that will give me grief about this, but if it has to be, I believe it should be in the roadway. I would rather, when that was originally put in, we didn't have the same wetlands regulations, probably because we didn't have the same understanding. We get smarter over the years. We have wetlands requirements. I'd like to put it in the road, and I think if it has to go in, if it goes in the road, perhaps we can look at our leaky pipes along the way and get a benefit out of it.
Thank you. Tricia?
Yeah, it's obviously a really tricky issue, and ask someone that has been involved in the sustainability committee that cares deeply about this. It's really about looking not at just what we want for today, but really what we want 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 40 years down the line. And so what the easiest solution is now might be absolutely the wrong one for the future. And the right answer for now might be the hardest, messiest, most difficult, most expensive project. I don't have those numbers on that, but I agree with Kate that it seems that that in a project like this, going through, paying attention to where something was decided to be placed at a different time, knowing what we know now may not be the right decision on it. It's not an easy answer. It's kind of a mess either way. But the research is definitely, we need to know that with our sustainability goals, that that the pipeline is needed at all.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Marty Ring from Bay Colony Drive. I'd like to know how you could use your position on the board to propel the implementation of the Ashland Upper Charles Trail?
Tricia, you want to start with that?
Being a new, just someone just entering the planning board, if that happens, in a way, I'm not sure about every power and regulation that we have. That's so I don't want to be ahead of myself and say, oh, we can do this, when really, we can't do that. That said, I think the goals of the planning board, as I said earlier, is this really combination of a strengthening in the community through economic development, but also through this less tangible thing about just being a great place to live. So as a board, being able to promote something that the trail is a high priority for Ashland, not just because we want to complete it, but because it starts to develop Ashland in another way, develop in terms of character, develop in terms of a wonderful place to be. I think it becomes high on the list to start to complete some of the projects that we've had going for years, and that the community as a whole, not just the planning board, but the community as a whole really feels strongly about. So I'm all for that.
Okay, thank you. Kate?
So the Upper Charles Trail, I think, we know that our town has differing values when you talk about an override, but we don't have different values when we talk about open space and outdoor recreation. That is, I'm sure there's some people that don't, but that is a value that stands out that, again, we can all be proud of. So the Upper Charles Trail, I think specifically with the planning board, I think there are, I know that trail is maybe not 100% decided, but if there's parcels that are talking about development along there, I think that is something that needs to be talked about with that certain developer, that can they leave the space? Will they be willing to, if they were planning an open space on a different side, could they move it here? And I think that we, again, going back to the planning and the comprehensive theme, once we develop that and market that we stand for it, that's going to, again, put it always at the forefront of these discussions on the planning board. And I think we can make, we have to look at what requirements can be made, but, we could require affordable housing, for instance, with a development. So same thing, we could require work with the trail as applicable.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the audience have any questions? Anyone else want to come up in line? Okay, I'll ask a few more questions then, because we have a little bit more time. The town's affordable housing stock is at approximately 4%, while the state requirement is 10%. There's a possibility that a development agreement between the town and the developer of Lot 2A at the Rail Transit District could add 140 to 180 more units to the affordable housing stock. What do you think the town and the planning board specifically should do to encourage more affordable housing in town? Kate?
So I, again, think that is a value we stand for. Unfortunately, we're at around the 4%, not the 10% or more. We have neighbors that are more than 10%. There's, I think, 31 communities, and one of them is Framingham. And I would like to see us get to that 10% at least, because I think it's something that we do stand for, that value of providing affordable housing, having people be able to stay here that grew up here, that maybe it keeps getting more expensive, having workforce housing for teachers, firefighters, those kind of things. So we have to, again, talk about it as community. It's not the Kate Jerzik plan, but I would like to see us consider having affordable requirements on developments. That's part of the way that our neighbors in Framingham have met it. Other communities, I believe Somerville does things like that. So with the Rail Transit District, I think that we should hopefully include in negotiations affordable. I wish we had done that the first time, because that would have helped with where we stand. I support it, and I believe our community does support affordable housing, so I think we need to make that a priority and do a better job.
Okay, great, thank you. Tricia?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very important issue for Ashland, and we need to embed it much more in the regulations that we have so that we can get up to these numbers more quickly. I think the town has been looking for creative solutions to this to help us out to try to solve these problems of providing affordable housing for different types of housing groups without putting additional economic strain on, say, the school system, so that we're not solving one problem but causing another problem. So I think looking at different types of groups that we can provide that affordable housing for, we can really fill a niche. Looking at sites that could be used for affordable housing that may not have been considered before, infill sites around town in different places that we really are, more embedding the housing instead of having larger projects that people can really become part of neighborhoods and communities. But we need to have those regulations in place to encourage that kind of development.
Great, thank you. Historically, Ashland has not fared well all the time in negotiations with developers in building in Ashland or in other adjacent communities. Understanding that you wouldn't want to tip your hand for future negotiations and that negotiations always have a give and take, what are your specific principles and priorities for negotiating with developers in Ashland and surrounding communities on the town's behalf? What interests will you seek to protect? Tricia?
I think we kind of already know what those interests are. I don't think it's a secret about the type of town we want to be, that we want to create smart communities that are easily accessible, that are fun to walk around in, that provide different modes of transportation, so that when we have development come in, that we need them to be able to, first and foremost, adopt to the kind of community we want to be, to provide those, whether it's green spaces, whether it's pathways, whether it's sidewalks, whether it's energy efficiency, solar panels, that they're adapting to our kind of community. And I think Ashland is, at least from our housing market, is becoming such a desirable community. I think we have the upper hand in starting to make more of those demands about what we want and how we want to formulate our community. And then the better we make that community, the better we make it for ourselves, I think the easier it is to get what we want, because those type of properties now become profitable in our area.
Okay, Kate?
So I think that we have to have an understanding of what things are negotiable and aren't. And that goes back to communicating with the public and understanding. Because there are certain things, it's America and we get to do what we want to do. But I think if we have a better outline plan and can communicate to developers, we're going to actually attract developers that already want to fit in with our community. And I think specifically, affordable housing absolutely has to be a priority. I think we have to insist that the zoning we do have while we're working on updating it is followed. And lots of times projects are brought that don't, and we maybe don't always. I'm not sure that should be a negotiated item. I think that should be a given, please follow, and then we can talk about things. I think we value open space, and I think we have to at least talk about that when a development fills up the lot and there's no place for even a playground that someone mentioned. We have to at least talk about that. I don't think that we have the rights to insist on those things until we change our zoning maybe, but those are priorities I think we should talk about: open space, affordable housing, getting the community we want.
Thank you. Anybody else want to ask a question? Okay, I have one last question. Yes, please come up.
Wilma Brunel, 10 Rodman Road. I have a question, is because we're talking about building and bringing more money in, taxes, etc. But as a town, do we have an idea of how fast we want to grow or how slow we want to grow or how it's going to benefit us to grow fast or slow? That's my question.
Do you-
Either,
Either,
both.
either or both, okay. Kate?
So we actually kind of have, since, I think, like the 98 plan, the 2003 plan, there's regional planning councils that give us this projection, and full build-outs around 22,000. Now, right now, I don't think we have any way not to meet full build-out because we don't really, we did a few years ago have a moratorium on building, trying to get our arms around what we can do. I think we have to put our, foot on the gas if we want to get ahead of this again. So I guess around that 22,000 would be full build-out, not without zoning changes. And I get the sense, but I may be seeking certain people that we would want to retain our character, which would mean a smaller amount of development, and we have to balance that with private property rights of what people do. We have to balance that with getting a community plan.
Thank you, Kate. Tricia?
The kind of where we're heading, where Ashland wants to go, obviously is a community decision, what kind of community we want to be. But there's also the rights of individual property owners who have, as long as they're following the regulations, they have a right to develop that property. Now, so it's up to the planning board and other parts of the town of Ashland to put the rules in place that at least allow us to look at those things carefully, to really know the types of things we want to come into the empty spaces that we have or the potential locations that we have for development, and to be able to encourage the type of businesses we want. I think by nature that has to be a slow process, but a consistent process. I don't think anything wants to happen too fast. I think that's where we got ourselves in trouble before, when things happen too fast. That said, it also takes a lot of time to put in all those proper regulations so that we can control that. So it's something I think I would like to move slower, but it might take a little while before we're able to make it move slower.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. We're going to do closing statements, so you each get 1 minute. So we'll start with Tricia, because I think you had one less question where you went first than Kate did, so we'll start with you.
Did not notice that. Well, it's been a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm excited actually to potentially kind of take this next leap forward versus a lot of the other things I've been in town, and to be an actual representative of the citizens of Ashland. And what this has done tonight is really, it got me thinking even on another level, these type of questions, and especially questions from the audience, questions from the high school students, about what really matters to the town. And so I'm looking forward to deeper conversations about those things and how they're going to potentially relate to my role on the planning board should that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate?
Thank you for your participation in the forum, both the organizers, attendees, and my fellow candidates. Your participation shows that we share the same value of community engagement. A vote for me means you are selecting a planning board member who will work to create a viable system for updates to Ashland zoning, who believes we should increase civic engagement, and will involve the community to understand the importance of zoning and how it impacts our homes and neighborhoods, who values planning ahead and community input. I would be honored to have your vote. I'm going to remind you, I don't expect you to be able to spell my name. You can just look for J under planning board. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for all of your thoughtful answers. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move now to the Board of Selectmen. And each candidate is going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and we're going to start with Adam and go alphabetically down the line. Adam?
Thank you, Roberta, and thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. My name is Adam Elbert, and I'm running for a seat on the Board of Selectmen. For those who don't know me, I'm an engineer, a volunteer baseball fanatic, a rock and roll music lover, and a friend to animals and the environment. Most importantly, I'm a husband and a dad, and like many of you, I'm continually trying to find the right work-life balance so that I can have a little bit of fun and still have community engagement. Good citizenship is extremely important to me and something I want to model for my daughter. My family moved to Ashland in 2010, and we were looking for a community with a strong identity and history, a school system that focused on a culture of achievement and inclusiveness, and a municipal government with a progressive mindset as it moved forward into the future. Since my move to Ashland, I've been an active participant in the Ashland school system, having been a member of multiple fundraising committees. I've been the president of the Ashland Education Foundation for the past 4 years and a member of the board for 6. And since 2010, we've raised over $750,000 in support of the Ashland schools, and I'm very proud of that organization for what we've achieved. I've also been an active town government member, previously serving on the Board of Health, and currently serving for the past 5 years on the Town Finance Committee, the past 2 as the committee chairman. I've spent 30 years in industry working in technical roles in addition to 10 years as an engineering director, manager, and group leader. I have a history of successful team building and project execution. I know what it takes to build consensus among people with diverse backgrounds and opinions, and I value healthy debate and really appreciate that most difficult decisions sometimes require uncomfortable conversations. I take pride in my ability to collaborate and bring people together, and we're at a critical time where the choices we make today will shape our future as a community and how we achieve the vision in years to come. We need to focus on unity over divisiveness, and strong leadership is required. So if elected, my focus as selectman will be to provide transparency by being available to address questions and concerns of the residents through open and honest communication that's delivered proactively, actively manage projects such as the construction of the new public safety building, as well as the disposition and maintenance of our existing facilities, minimize the tax burdens on seniors and financially vulnerable families through tax abatements and pursuing state funding, preserve the character of the town through high quality, to continue to provide the high quality services, both municipal and school.
You need to stop.
Can I get 10 seconds?
Go ahead.
All right,
10
thank you.
seconds.
Protect and responsibly steward town-owned open space and wetlands by standing up and saying no to projects like the Eversource pipeline, and most importantly, be accountable for my decisions. I will apply my personal and professional experiences to give a political voice to all Ashland citizens so that we can make decisions in the best interest of the entire community as we preserve Ashland's historic past while using it to chart our future.
Now,
Thanks.
you're on FinCom. That was more than 10 seconds. Okay, anyone else, if you go over a little bit, we'll also let you go over. No problem. Brandy Kinsman, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library, and we love Ashland for putting together this event. I love that this room is packed with people wanting to know more about the candidates. I think it's very important that that you all, and even folks at home watching on WACA, have an opportunity to ask us questions and know who is running for office in your town. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my husband Dave and I have lived in Ashland for the last 13 years. We have one son, Nate, who is in 6th grade at the Ashland Middle School. Professionally, I work for an asset management firm in Boston. I've been there for about 14 years on the sales side, and I have, since business school, have about 18 years of marketing, sales, project management experience. And the reason I'm running for the Board of Selectmen is really to continue the positive momentum we've seen in town in recent years. I too believe that this is a critical time for Ashland. I think that the next 2 to 3 years are really going to shape our town for decades to come. And, you know, I really have 3 main priorities for running for the Board of Selectmen. One is, sorry, I feel an echo. One is really a focus on economic development, which has been something that's been very near and dear to my heart. Just to also kind of give you more background, I started getting involved in Ashland about 4 years ago. I was asked to be part of the Yes for Ashland campaign, the Override Initiative, 4 years ago. And following that, I joined the Ashland Redevelopment Authority. And following that, I was part of this powerhouse group of women that created and launched the Corner Spot 2.5 years ago. And currently, I sit on the Ashland Middle School Site Council, and I'm also recently joined the board of the Arts Ashland Alliance. So my goals, again, economic development. I really feel like we need to support existing businesses and bring new businesses to Ashland. I think we also need to really improve communication in town between town government and residents. I think that's a huge, huge thing that we can do. And to really encourage community engagement and create what I call a culture of volunteerism in Ashland. And I'm getting the red light, so I am going to stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Joe?
Thank you, and good evening. I'd like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for hosting this evening. I also like to thank WACA-TV for live streaming this event for those that are at home that are not able to be here this evening. I'd like to thank moderator, Ms. Roberta Silman, and timekeeper, Lisa and Diane, that are out back, and the many others who worked hard to get this forum together. I was asked what my motivation was to run again as a selectman, being the incumbent and having served 3 terms prior. It comes to having the experience on the board, being devoted to this town, being devoted to my family. I love this town. I also love the pride felt by many accomplishments that I have been part of as a member of the board. Moving in and watching Ashland continue to move in a positive direction for the future. I developed my leadership skills through life lessons, also as a leadership program through the police department as a police sergeant. I was able to utilize these skills and worked as the board as the chair for 2 consecutive years. Those skills also helped me to make some decisions as the chair that weren't probably favorable to the other members, but we worked together with them. One of my proudest achievements is sitting in this room this evening and having the sitting board approve and elect town manager Mike Herbert. Mike created a great management team, a great financial plan, and he increased our reserves from $2 million to $6 million in 4 years. That's pretty awesome. He also developed and added more staff to the police and fire departments. He created 2 new positions, Human Resource Department and the Economic Development Department. And I see the director sitting in right out back there. Throughout my tenure as a selectman, I have and will continue to support land preservation. During my tenure, we preserved over 250 acres of land, adding 42 acres to the town forest. 120 acres we secured at the RTD. 12.5 of that was donated to the YMCA through discussions and agreements. We created the Warren Wood districts and added another 57 acres to that district to keep that area pristine and beautiful for future years to come. Additional accomplishments and supported the initiatives that I have. Back in 2010, I discussed the solar farm on top of the House Street landfill. Well, guess what, folks? There's a solar farm up there now. I supported the creation when it came to us in front, and Beth Reynolds gave us the idea of the corner spot. I thoroughly support it, and I think it's a great thing that's happening. I supported the turf field at the Mendez School to get the middle school to allow kids to enjoy an active game and rest of the fields that were naturally fielded. I am the Public Safety Complex. I am the chairman of that committee, and I thank those who voted at the last town meeting to get that passed. It only took 30 years, but we got it done. I support the future initiatives from the school. 2 more seconds.
Okay.
Everybody else had the opportunity.
No, I know. I'm going to
Okay.
let you finish.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I supported future school initiatives, such as the new elementary school that's replaced the Mendez School, and I will continue to support the downtown redevelopment program and the 126 corridor redesigning. Over the past 9 years, I have proven to the residents that I have the leadership skills, the qualities, the experience, and the vision, but much more than that, the integrity to proudly hold the title of selectman. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Jane Stefanini.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to be the first one to stick to the 2 minutes. Ready?
Go.
Okay. My name is Jane Q. Stefanini, and I'm a candidate for the Board of Selectmen. I want to thank you for the invitation to participate in tonight's event. I'd like to share kind of a funny anecdotal story of something that happened to me today that will give you an indication into who I am. For anyone that knows me knows I love to garden, love to garden. I spent the entire weekend in my yard. I dug. I like getting my hands dirty. I love the result. I thoroughly enjoy it. Well, unfortunately, I woke up this morning, both eyes swollen shut, and my throat had begun to close. So that is the problem. So of all days, I said to myself, I can't believe of all days this is going to happen. My one big moment in the sun, and I'm going to have to give it to my husband to read for me because I won't be able to see or speak. So here I am anyway. I found my way to the doctor, got some medicine, and so here I am. And I think it speaks to who I am and the character that I don't give up. I just don't give up. That's how I'm wired. I've been a resident of Ashland for 35 years, and for those of you that have been here, that amount of time, you'll remember that there was one flashing light and a dirt road downtown. I was part of that. I remember that. I bought my first home at Spyglass Hill when I was 23 years old as a single woman. I then bought a condo at Pine Lakes, oh my gosh, and finally a single-family home where I currently reside with my husband, John, my son, Michael, who's a sophomore at BC, and daughter, Giovanna, junior in high school. I've always wanted to give back and get involved in local government, so I'm soon to be empty nester and have the opportunity to do so now, which is why I'm doing it now. I'm a graduate of UMass Amherst with a degree in Bachelor of Science. I've been a real estate professional for almost 20 years in various capacities. I've been Director of Education, I've been a Relocation Director, and my current position is Vice President for Coldwell Banker Residential Brokerage. I've been a member of the Greater Boston Real Estate Board since 2001 and lobbied legislatures at the State House on behalf of homeowners. I certainly have the education experience and energy to succeed in the role of selectman. I look forward to the opportunity. It's close.
Thank you very much. Okay. So the first question. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated in October that we have until 2030, or 11 more years, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 45% if we want to limit temperature increases to 1.5 degrees Celsius. To not do that would pose an existential threat to the continued survival of life on the planet. Believing in thinking globally and acting locally, Ashland's Sustainability Committee proposed a non-binding resolution to the selectmen to endorse eliminating or offsetting all municipal, residential, and business greenhouse gas emissions in Ashland by 2040. The selectmen expressed support for the resolution, but felt more time was needed to educate the public and decided not to endorse the resolution at this time, but to ask that it be brought back to town meeting in the fall of 2019. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the threat of climate change, 1 being no threat, 10 being most severe? And if you believe it's a threat, what would you do as a member of the board to help Ashland address this emergency? And finally, if you were on the board, how would you have voted regarding the resolution? And if you are on the board now, why did you personally vote as you did? So let's start with Adam.
Wow.
I can repeat
No, that's all
those
right.
pieces if you want.
So I'll start and say probably about a 15, maybe a 20. I think we should be doing everything we can to minimize our carbon footprint. That's why the Eversource pipeline is so frustrating. Why are we running another gas pipeline when we're trying to reduce that exact type of thing from a carbon emissions perspective? I'm not on the board currently, but I absolutely would have voted in favor of putting that resolution forward at the current town meeting and working between when this was originally proposed until town meeting to start educating the public on some of these issues. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of places like the Corner Spot, like the Farmers Market as well, to continue that education effort. There's no reason to delay this. We should be starting years ago, and I think we should immediately move forward on this and do everything that we can to try and reduce our carbon footprint emission, and I fully support the resolution from the Sustainability Committee.
Okay. Thank you. Brandy?
So I was actually at the Net Zero Forum that was held here last week, which was a really great opportunity. I would also, I wouldn't say 15, because we always said 1 to 10. I would say definitely a 10. I think we are, as Matt Marshquist put it, we need to put our shoes on and get ready to run. And so, you know, I think that the idea of us going 100% renewable and passing a resolution as a net zero community is something that we absolutely have to do. I think that the fact that we have budgeted this year for a sustainability coordinator is a huge, huge deal for our town. I think that being able to have somebody that can be a grant writer and bring in more money to Ashland for green initiatives is a huge opportunity for us. I do think that there is an education component. I think that out of the people that were at the Net Zero Forum, I think there was maybe 40 of us. And, you know, I think that having it being so visible as a thing that we need to do, it requires much more people to be engaged and involved. I would say that when we do become a net zero community, there are lots of things that we can do from a building perspective and a planning board perspective. And I think that, you know, we can look at it as a whole community effort on how we can really improve our sustainability as a community.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have to agree with both Adam and Brandy with respect to the level of importance of reducing that carbon footprint. 10 is a likely number, and that they both said that, and I have to agree with that. The board at the time was not opposed to the letter that was going to be sent by the sustainability. There were some things that they would like to have seen changed and added, and that was one of the reasons why they would not approve the letter as it was written. They wanted to see some more substance in the letter, and we were giving them the opportunity to provide the time to do that and to come back to us so that we could sign that letter and get it sent off, just to clarify that for everybody else that's out there. Educating is just not the adults. It also has to do with the teens and the kids and the children in school. So starting at an early age to give them the ideas of what it's like and what you should be doing is kind of important and valued. Sustainability has always been involved in the Ashland Day event. They've had their booth, and they provide all the information that they can to the people of Ashland that come to support the day itself. So with respect to that, we could do more with providing information and educating not only just the older folks, but the kids as well, so that they already have an idea of what they need to do and how to do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jane?
I would have to agree with the rest of the panel, so this is a good sign, that I would give it a 10. I think it's very important that we begin the process immediately. The one concern I do have, though, is, and I think Brandy touched on this a little bit, is communication. I think we need to be better as an organization, all organizations, all boards, communicating with the residents and not expecting the residents to go search for the information, but rather to bring it to them and find vehicles where we can bring information to them so we can have rooms with twice as many people here to help to listen to the information and help make educated decisions. So as much as I agree with the initiative, and I wholeheartedly do, I think we have to first educate, as you said, the community so that they're on board, because our job really is to represent what the residents are asking for, not to dictate, but to include them. So I think we need a little bit more feedback in that regard.
Thank you. If you are elected or re-elected to the Board of Selectmen, what will be your top 3 priorities for the term that you'll be serving? What ideas do you have to ensure that Ashland is able to maintain the same level of service, meet its obligations, and perhaps even provide some tax relief to all residents, especially seniors? Brandy?
So I think the top 3, I'm going to move this a little closer. So I think the top 3 priorities for our town are really Route 126, which has been a project that I have been involved in as part of the ARA since, well, the Pond Street project has been in existence since 2013, and I think that is a huge opportunity for our town, not only to transform the entire corridor from the Holliston to the Framingham line, but also to bring in new businesses and to really develop that as an economic corridor for us. The second priority, I would say, it's probably a co-priority more or less, is really our downtown initiative. I feel that we need as a community to have a thriving downtown that people walk. I think it's been monumental to see people walk from the farmer's market to Corner Spot in the summertime. I think it's one of the best things that we can do. And I also think that that will also drive the businesses downtown as well. And the third thing is really planning for development, planning for how we are, as a community, handling the housing issues that we have, how we take care of our seniors. We really need to have a strategic plan that really is comprehensive.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Thank you. Well, the three most important issues that I feel for the future of Ashland is one is affordable housing. I sit on the Affordable Housing Trust, and as I look out upon the audience here this evening, I see that we have a lot of older folks out here this evening. And where are they going to live when they decide to retire and they sell their homes? If they want to stay in Ashland, we need to make sure that those availabilities of having an affordable housing location for them to stay in town, enjoy the town, that they've worked so hard to support over the years. That, to me, would be a number one priority. The second priority is to try to work together, and we talked about this earlier, the communication within the departments, that as was discussed with the planning board members, candidates, to sit down with each group that's involved, from planning to zoning, to work together. The town is looking at the liaison group that we formulated a few years ago, well, a few months ago, I should say, with respect to being the selectmen working together and jointly being on liaison to the planning, being a liaison to the zoning boards. And the last one would be to help with the economic development. That goes without saying. Suggested that a few years ago with the solar farms, and maybe we can do more with respect to solar farming and try to increase that wealth. That also helps with the stabilization and net zero as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Jane?
I think being a 35-year resident of the town, the thing that kind of gets me the most is the tax rate. Being in the real estate industry for over 20 years and relocation director for a portion of that, it was my job to counsel people as they were moving into the Massachusetts area, the greater Boston area. And believe it or not, and you won't like to hear this, they would specifically say, I've done my research online. I'm not interested in Ashland, Northborough, and a variety of other towns because the tax rate was very high. That's always been a problem. And I think it continues to be a problem. And I would truly set that as one of my main priorities if I were elected, and to try to find ways to reduce the tax rate, and maybe even consider a two-tier tax rate perhaps for seniors, or, there's a variety of things that we can do that other states do. And I just think we're kind of missing the boat a little bit on that. We're rated 197 of the 351 states and towns in Massachusetts as the highest tax rate. We're one of the highest in the Metro West area, and that's inexcusable, in my opinion. And I only got to say one. I would say along with that would be development of 126 and bringing commercial opportunities to the town, not to conflict with retail, not to take from retail, but to bring jobs and bring money to retail vendors.
Adam?
Thank you, Roberta. Obviously, economic development is incredibly important for the town. Some of the other things that a number of the other candidates have discussed when we talk about tax rates, raising revenue, bringing businesses into town, We don't get a lot of business revenue when it comes to our tax base. That's primarily from residential. We only get about 7 or 8% from our business tax base. So unless we're willing to double the number of businesses that we come into town, it's going to be really hard to move that needle. So I think we need to focus on enabling the businesses that we have and helping them be successful by working with organizations like the ABA and finding ways to help them continue to grow within town. A couple other things. We need to improve communication, transparency, and inclusion within town. It's just not okay for something like the Eversource pipeline to hit and nobody know about it until a month before, all the major meetings and depositions are happening, and now we have nothing that we can do about it because we're so late to the game, okay? We can't expect people to be searching through agendas and meeting minutes on a constant basis to try and drag out the pertinent bits or be watching TV feeds on a constant basis. You'll never get out of your house. We need to be proactively pushing information to the residents of this town so that they know the key things that are going on, know where to be when and what meetings are happening so that they can actually take action and influence what's happening and get their opinion heard. And last, I think we need to do a better job of continuing to balance the building versus open space. We need to keep preserving open space. We've done a good job at that. Key acquisitions, obviously the town can't buy the town, so we need to keep our eye on that for things like in the RTD district and other areas where we can't afford to have, the Valentine estate turned into 180 units and clogging up 135 even more. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is on tax relief. Residential taxes have skyrocketed over the years. While revenue from development agreements may temporarily increase revenue, those special payments don't occur every year and fade away just as the stresses on public services begin to be felt. As numerous cost of community services studies have shown, increased tax revenue from new development does not cover the cost of providing services to those new residents. Property taxes put many Ashland families, especially seniors on a fixed income, under severe financial pressure. The town has non-negotiable financial obligations, such as OPEB, and some inherent structural budget strains. What ideas do you have to ensure the same level of services, the town's ability to meet its obligations, and potentially provide some tax relief to all residents, especially seniors? Would you be willing to look at alternative revenue sources, such as advocating to the state to allow towns to create a local progressive income tax based on an ability to pay, which could gradually supplant real estate taxes? And I'm going to ask Jane to start with that.
I'm glad you did, thank you, because again, this is near and dear to me, and I think, answered a lot of that with my prior question. I respectfully disagree that bringing in commercial business would not move the needle. It doesn't affect retail. It wouldn't take jobs from retail space. It doesn't have anything to do with downtown Ashland redevelopment. And in fact, it would add to that. It would add money to the coffers, so to speak, by bringing in a corporation. I mean, if you look at what Hopkinton did with EMC, and I know that's a one-hit pony, and if, God forbid, EMC left Hopkinton, they'd be in big trouble. But, a company like that we could try to attract from Boston, where the rates are so high for the lease rates, to attract a company like that out here to bring jobs 9 to 5 would not affect the infrastructure, would not affect the school system, really would not affect the day-to-day infrastructure of our town, but would add revenue and would allow us to hopefully increase the commercial coffers to offset the residential burden.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Thank you. I do agree with what some of the things Jane has just mentioned in her response. One of the concerns that I do have is that we don't own a lot of land, and the land that is owned and it's currently being utilized by current business owners are not being very cooperative with what the town would like to see happen in reaching out and providing opportunities for new businesses that come into town. They're there to make money. We could think about giving them incentives, tax breaks and tax reliefs for that way to draw businesses in. But you take it from one pocket, you have to replenish it in another pocket, and where is that going to come from? So it's like a catch-22. We have these concerns, but at the same token, we have to monitor the growth of the entire town, not just individual homes and projects, but similar commercial space. And again, the town doesn't have that luxury of having that. And I agree, EMC is a one-hit pony. And then Legacy Farms is another aspect that we as a town are being affected by the transportation issues. And anybody that goes to work in the morning between 6 to 7 or tries to get to the train station by 5 o'clock, good luck, because the traffic is just going to get worse. But to go back to the question at hand, again, tax relief, try to work together with the new businesses that try to come into town. We did that with the folks that purchased the old Timex the old General Electric building. They've been very cooperative with us and working together with us. And if we can get that same type of cooperation with other businesses and other business owners that own these large parcels of land, then and only then can we start bringing money back into the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy?
So I think that we need to focus on redevelopment versus new development in town. I think that as we develop the 126 corridor, as we work on downtown, and we maybe look at some mixed use where we can put density downtown where it belongs, that rather than use open space. I've been down to the senior center. I talked to the seniors. I know they're concerned about affordability. I know they're concerned about the tax rate. We need to have more affordable housing in Ashland. I think that's something that is a huge concern. I know that our current plan is that our housing plan keeps us at 4% for affordability currently, and we do need to make progress towards that 10%. So we are not subject to 40B developers swooping in and expediting the development process. We need to look at real creative ways and be strategic about what we do. And so I think it takes some creative thinking. I think that we've done some good things as far as, making an affordability plan and making sure that there's a 25% affordable component to any new development. I think that's going to be extremely important going forward.
Thank you. Adam?
Thank you, Roberta. Just as a side comment, if anybody's driven down South Street in Hopkinton, I think you'll say without a doubt that EMC absolutely affects the infrastructure of that town. It is an absolute logjam trying to get up and down that road. It affects the roads and everything around it from a plowing and construction point of view. So I think from a new business perspective, we need to find the right business for the right location, okay? It's not just the right business and shove it anywhere we can find it. We have a lot of vacant and unused locations that could be redeveloped and refurbished to put new businesses in there. On the affordable housing issue, I completely agree. Ashland has a much higher percentage senior population than a number of surrounding towns. I think we have started to do a better job of educating our seniors on the fact that there are circuit breaker and tax reliefs available to them to help defray the cost of taxes. What you'll see at town meeting coming with the Stormwater Initiative is a similar tax break available to seniors. So we are taking that into account to try and ease the tax burden on them. And I also think we need to continue to aggressively pursue state and federal grant money to offset some of those types of projects like we're doing with the downtown redevelopment, where we have $4 million coming in from the state, so that doesn't have to go against the tax levy or against the general fund from an overall perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to invite members of the audience who might have a question to come up.
Hi, Ryan Turncliffe again, and I'm not going to ask you the question that I asked the Board of Assessors. Respectfully, our taxes are a popular question to ask, and it's very easy for everyone to say, sure, I'd like to have them lower. The reality is, I think we heard earlier that, the town has made significant improvements in service, new firefighters, new police officers, new economic development. So with our tax rate being what it is, what new things would you do, or what new initiatives would you like to see or support as members of the Board of Selectmen should tax rates not change? And that, recognizing that's a tough thing to do.
Is that a question for all of them?
As time allows.
Who would you like to have start?
as the moderator suggests.
Okay, so I guess everybody has had a chance to be the first one to answer a question except Joe. So can we start with you?
Boy, that was a setup. Anyway, anyway, new initiatives. One thing I'd just like to do a quick clarification.
Sure.
When you sit down and discuss building development with contractors, and you sit down and say, no, we want 25% affordable housing, well, they shut the door, because they don't want to do 25%, because it's going to cost them money. And so what they do, they throw the 40B page out here. We'll end up doing 40B, and that's going to cost us in the long run. So you have to be very careful how you negotiate and how you deal with contractors or developers coming into town, because they know that's their race in the hole. And then they don't have to worry about anything to do 40B. They're not obligated by bylaws or zoning changes, this and that. They can do what they need to do to make money, and then we're stuck with additional students, and you talk about tax rate going up higher, that could happen. I just wanted to make that quick clarification. Thank you. But to get back to Mr. Turncliffe's comment, what would I see? What would I like to see happen? I can remember my father telling me, you pay for what you get. And if you want the best, you're going to pay for it. If you want what you have right now, yeah, there's going to be a slight bump, and we have the 2.5%, tax override. That'll happen. But I think with the conservative management team that we have, I think that comes into play. And if it wasn't for them doing what they have been doing for us, we probably wouldn't be sitting in a situation where the money coffers are there in our reserve funds. Like I said, another $4 million over the last 3 or 4 years. That's pretty significant. Now, is that something that we can utilize to help offset some of the tax burden and tax relief for some of the seniors? That's a possibility. But that's a question that has to be put on town meeting or even on a ballot for everybody to agree on, because that is something that everybody in this community needs to have a voice in, and not just a few.
Thank you. Jane, and then we'll bounce back this way.
Sure. I actually don't think we should be thinking about new initiatives at this point. I think I was brought up to be conservative and to be mindful of my budget, my household budget, my office budget, the budget I work with every day as vice president for Coldwell Banker. And I would do the same for the town. I can't spend money we don't have. And so to start talking about new initiatives is a wonderful idea. And I would love to be able to say we can do 100 new things. But until we tighten the ship at home and take care, as Joe said, take care of the seniors and take care of the residents and kind of put a hold on the tax rate that we have now and not let it escalate anymore, I think that's a priority. That would be my choice.
Okay, thank you. Adam?
So I think it's important to consider for your taxes, what's the bang for your buck, okay? If you're getting a great return on investment for the taxes that you pay, well, that's a good thing. And I really give credit to Mr. Herbert, Ms. Iponi, the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee and the School Committee. They work like crazy to maximize every penny that you pay in taxes to get you the most services and amenities possible in town. So, keeping that in mind, if we want to add services, there's a cost to that, just like Mr. Magnani said, okay? And unless we're willing to reduce another service, you should expect that there would be a tax increase associated with that. Now, is that the right thing to do? Well, I would leave that up to you, right? It's the will of the people in this case. So if the residents decide either we want to cut something to give something else a chance or pay more to get those extra services, then that's what we can do. But it's completely up to you. As Joe said, it would go to a vote at town meeting so that we could understand what the will of the people is.
Okay, thank you. Brandy?
So I think our new initiative should really focus on downtown and creating this thriving, vibrant downtown. I think it's incredibly, the new business incentive program that was just launched a couple weeks ago with Needham Bank, a partnership with Needham Bank, I think is very inventive and creative. This allows businesses to invest in their own improvements downtown and elsewhere in Ashland, to be able to say, okay, we're going to invest in signs and facades and make it easy and affordable for them to do so. I think that the partnership with Needham Bank and providing 0% loans to new businesses and for businesses that want to make improvements is incredibly innovative. I also think that we need to make a much more strategic plan about downtown. You know, we need to envision what downtown really could be. We have the Upper Charles Trail coming online. We have the Riverwalk coming downtown. We need to kind of have this vision of what we want it to be when the public safety building comes online. What are we going to do with the fire station and the police station? How are we going to handle parking? How can we pull in Stone Park to make it more part of downtown? So I think our initiatives should really focus on making the downtown be the heart of our community.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Preston Crow. I serve on the Upper Charles Trail Committee, and my question relates to that. I want to know how familiar you are with the proposed trail and where it would fit in your sense of priorities at the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, Adam, you want to start?
Sure. I don't envy you the work that you have to do cobbling together all the various pieces of the trail to try and put that together. I think it's a great initiative that's going to add a significant amenity to the town, and I fully support it. I think there's a lot of work to be done still, so I think that whatever the Board of Selectmen can do to provide support to the committee, you know, we should be completely on board with.
Thank you, Brandy.
I also support the Upper Charles Trail. I think that having a trail that links to other communities, my son and my family bike, and we biked the Holliston Trail, we biked the Milford Trail. It would be awesome to be able to have that in our backyard. I think that's a huge thing. I think it's also something very important for our town to not be so reliant on cars, to be able to bike downtown and have that connect to the rest of the community is huge. So I think that there is a lot of work to be done. I think it's still in its infancy. I've already been told that I need to be part of the cleanup days at the Upper Charles Trail, so I will be there removing brush with my family. So I think that the work that you guys are doing is great, and I can't wait to be one of the first ones on the trail. I do have to say, I was sad to miss the walkthrough. I had a family commitment that I couldn't do, so I can't wait to be there for the next one. So thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. I have to agree with Adam and Brandy with respect to that. It's a nice thing to have for the community. It adds to the value of Ashland in and of itself. I know the board has unanimously supported it in the past and will continue to support it. I know there has been some tweaks in the path design itself. I haven't seen those yet, so I'm a little concerned as to, what changes have been made and where the path is now going to what it was when it was presented to us. So I would like to see that update. I don't think we have seen that yet, so I would like to see that. And like we all have said, that it connects different towns, which is it's a nice thing to do. And you've had our support, and you'll continue to get our support. I just would like to see those changes, on the map, so we don't have issues down the road with those people who may be upset that it's going through their yard or behind their yard, we've had in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Jane?
I can speak to this firsthand that, as a realtor, as a broker for many, many years, these are the things people look for when they come to communities. And if you're talking about economic growth and housing development and future growth in our town, those are the kinds of things they want. They ask for it. It's not something, we don't have a checklist when a person is relocating from California and say, well, are you interested in a town with a trail? They tell us, and they're very clear in what it is they want, and those kinds of things are very important to them. So I absolutely would support the development and the continuation of the development of the trail. I think it's very important.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Janet Platt. Thank you all for running. And my question is, Chapter 42 of our town bylaws requires Ashland to have a capital planning committee. And so I would like to know what your position is on reinstating our capital planning committee, which we do not have right now. And I also would like to know, so any volunteer group, committee, or board it's hard. It's hard to recruit people for it. It's hard to, we ask a lot of our volunteers, like the Board of Selectmen, for example. So how can the Board of Selectmen support a volunteer committee or board so that they can work together effectively and carry out their responsibilities?
So why don't we start with Brandy? It's kind of a two-parter.
Okay.
If you need her to, if you
So-
need Janet to repeat any part
Well,
of the question she's
so
asked.
as far as the capital planning committee, I would need to kind of know what the goal of the committee would be, but as far as having more planning, I'm definitely in support of that. As far as volunteerism goes and recruiting people, this has been something I've actually been really talking to a lot of people about. As I've talked to committees and groups, I've heard from so many people that they are desperate for volunteers. And I also have heard from new people that have come into town that it's really difficult to connect. So I think we need to make it easier for people and groups to get together. In fact, I held an event last week creating a culture of volunteerism. And what it really was asking organizations to take a different approach to volunteerism. Instead of having tables or groups, it was really organizations giving me an actual job description of what a volunteer would be doing for that group. I had them write it out. I had them give me a time commitment, which is huge, because people want to be able to volunteer in small, manageable ways. And I've had such great positive feedback. I put together a document that had everything in it. 17 organizations participated, which was phenomenal. And I think it's changing the way we talk about volunteering in Ashland, which I think is really important. I also think we need to centralize it. We need to have a website that works for us. There's no way for us to connect as a community. So we need to work on that as well. So I think that the combination of changing the way we recruit volunteers and get people engaged is key, and then also making it easy for them to connect.
Thank you. Adam?
Sure. So for those who aren't familiar with the history of the Capital Committee, about 2 years ago, everybody but one person on the committee quit. And as a result, the committee was effectively dissolved because it couldn't work as a person of one. That person's term expired August 31st of last year. Technically, the Board of Selectmen has been in violation of the bylaw ever since the committee has not been formed. If the motivating factor for not appointing people was because they couldn't get any more volunteers to do it because of that one person, well, that obstacle hasn't been there since last August. So I fully support the fact that we should have a capital committee. It should be doing its job. It should be appointed by the board as specified in the bylaw. And let's keep moving forward. They should be providing input to the town manager as part of producing the capital plan, which goes into the budget that we produce and hopefully approve at town meeting. In terms of volunteering, I think that we should do a much better job of leveraging the available high school students. They have an enormous number of groups that are in the high school that support volunteering within the community, and so many people, even when they go off to college, come back and live in Ashland. So there's a huge resource there. I also think that it will do us a lot of good to continue to reach out through the schools, especially through the lower elementary and the middle elementary schools, because there are a lot of parents that are interested in becoming volunteers. They just don't know how. So partnering with the schools, I think, could have a big impact.
Okay, thank you. Jane?
I think there's something more fundamental here, and I think that is lack of communication. We've kind of all touched on it a little bit in a variety of ways. But I don't think there are people that are unwilling to volunteer, that wouldn't be willing to step up. I just think the communication of how to recruit them is very limited. And I think that's one of our biggest problems. You asked a two-part question, is how do you get them to work with other boards? And that kind of, it all goes under one umbrella, which is that once you first initiate using technology, text blasts. I mean, we do it for a snowstorm, we do it for water usage, we do it for a variety of things in town where you get ash pack, you get all the calls. Why not blast, use technology, no cost, low cost to the town, but to blast messages to the residents? And that's what I was saying earlier, is to not wait for them to come to us and volunteer and get out of their cars and walk into the town hall, but to go after them. I think that's the big difference. And I think once we get people to engage, then it would be our job. Step 2 would be to communicate group with group. And I don't think that's a problem. I don't see that as an issue at all, once you get them. But I think we've got to reach out to the residents and show them what we're doing, tell them what we're doing, ask them for volunteers. And Brandy touched on it, maybe with a Facebook page or some other way to communicate. But there've got to be other ways, low or no cost, for us to communicate, not flyers, not a cost to the town, so we can get more people to volunteer, because I know there'd be more that are interested.
Thank you. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I get kind of concerned when I hear we're in violation of the bylaw, or we're in violation of this. People need to remember that this is a volunteer committee. We have talent bank forms that are asked, or we've been asked to fill out, provided to the Board of Selectmen, and the process moves on that way. There have been multiple times throughout our Board of Selectmen meetings that we have made those announcements that there are open seats available for those people who wish to become participants or would like to become volunteers. I cannot answer why they're not volunteering. I think you may have a pretty good understanding as to why, but if it was one individual that is no longer there because their term expired, we've still made those announcements, but yet we still haven't received any talent bank forms for those people who should be or would be willing to become members of the Capital Improvements Committee. We can't go out there and beat them over the head with a stick and say, you will become members. No, you can't do that, because we won't get anybody that's going to be effective to do the things that need to be done. So with respect to volunteering, it's up to those people who want to do it. A lot of people realize that being a part of this committee is very time-orientated, time-consuming. And ask the 16 people that resigned from that committee as to why they didn't want to be there anymore, because they didn't want to waste their time over things that were not beneficial to the town. And they were just sitting there. They're volunteers, they were their time is as important as anybody else. So if you want to blame us, that's why God gave us broad shoulders, and that's why we're called the Board of Selectmen, okay? Because it goes to the top. We don't bring it down to the bottom, it goes to the top. I get it and I understand that. But let's be fair about this. It's a volunteer group. Talent bank forms are asked to be filled out, and they're not. Could we do a better job? Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I have a quick rebuttal?
Sure.
So I think, and one of the things that I've discovered throughout this whole process is one of the reasons people aren't volunteering is people don't know what's being asked of them. So I've seen the Facebook posts saying these positions in these committees are on the Ashland Facebook page, and people don't know what that means. Like, we don't make that real. We don't know what even that committee does. So I think, making it more tangible and things that people can understand and do is huge. One other thing I wanted to say was that I was at the Ashland High School speaking in front of the student council, and I asked those students, how many of you have volunteered for the town of Ashland over the last year? And every single one of those kids raised their hand, because there is that community service component to their graduation requirement. And so how do we take that, what is being leveraged in the high school, and make that town-wide? Because these kids are going to come back, and they want to be very valuable citizens in our community. And how do we do that as a community? How do we create a culture of volunteerism where people can give little bits of time and make it be the norm where people give in Ashland? We have a great volunteer group with lots of heart, but it's only less than 1 out of every 3 people in Ashland volunteer their time. How do we raise that number? We make it easier. That is the solution.
Thank you. Okay, question?
Adora Lay, student of AHS. I think Adam Albert covered it a little, but this is a question for all the selectmen. Where do you think we can make the most impact in our community to stimulate economic activity in town?
Okay, do you want to take that,
Sure,
Jane?
I've been very clear on that. I just think that we need to attract commercial industry, and I know Adam said compared South Street in Hopkinton. I was just using that as an example. I didn't in any way mean to suggest that we turn 126 into a one-man band all the way down the street. All I'm saying is, you can attract an organization, you can attract a company that won't put pressure on the infrastructure that we already have. It's a Monday through Friday event. It's tax-based. I work in the Needham office. Needham has a tax rate of $8 per thousand. $8 because of the Needham Industrial Park. Now granted, I can't compare Ashland to Needham, but it kind of whets your appetite a little bit when you see the opportunity and you see what industry can do to alleviate the burden on the residents. And I'm a resident, and I don't have the right to take it out of your pocket or out of my pocket. So I need to find a way and want to find a way, and I see that as being through commercial development and commercial recruiting, attracting businesses.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you want to?
Sure, thank you. Ashland's problem hadn't started 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It started over 35 years ago when the town made a decision that it was going to be a bedroom community and put its efforts into building condominiums instead of commercial buildings. Okay, it started back then. We are reaping the sins of our former fathers, and it's not helping us in any way, shape, or form. Again, as I said earlier, a lot of the commercial properties that are even abandoned, there are plans to be utilized that I'm aware of, but it takes time to get things formulated and done. And it bothers me because we had an opportunity to do a lot of things, especially where Workman Circle is. All right? The town said no. Town meeting floor said no. They'd rather have the condo units than make it an industrial park where there was going to be a brewery that was willing to come in and provide a lot of jobs to this town. But the town said no, and that was over 35 years ago. So that's, we're feeling the effects of it now, which is kind of unfortunate. So we have to deal with the cards that have been dealt and try to work around it and work the best we can to fit small businesses into these pockets of lands that are available. And the only thing I can say is that I know Beth has a tedious job ahead of her in getting commercial businesses coming into town, because it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So thank you.
Thank you. Brandy?
So I think the biggest opportunity we have for stimulating economic development in town is really this opportunity with 126. So we have over $16 million that's going to be coming into town to help us redevelop that corridor, to really change that landscape on that side of town. And we need to look at zoning in that area in 126 and see what we can do to really support this as an economic corridor. And I think that, not just having it be a drive-through from Holliston to Framingham, but really have Ashland be a destination for economic activity. And we need to be creative with this. Like, we need to know that Ashland is a place where economic development can really thrive. And I really do also think that we have some opportunities with downtown. We have a brewery coming downtown next year. How cool is that going to be as far as being able to attract more people and more money into Ashland and have Ashland residents really kind of continue to spend their own money in Ashland? I think that is something that is going to be a real benefit to our town. So I think we have plenty of economic development opportunities, and Beth does do a great job. And I think that things like this business incentive program, where businesses are wanting to come to Ashland because we make it affordable and easier for them to do. I know as part of a new business, Beth has a checklist for new businesses coming into town, and going through the planning board process and making it easier. And that is what we really need to do. We need to kind of help businesses through that process. So I think we're in a good position to be able to do that going forward.
Thank you. Adam?
Thanks, Roberta. I think we also need to keep in mind, by the way, I agree exactly with what Joe was saying, but we also need to keep in mind the fact that we're not Southborough, we're not Westborough, we don't have Route 9 coming through that's going to hit business home runs for us on a constant basis, okay? 126 and 135 will never be Route 9, and that's a good thing, okay, to preserve the character of our town. But that means that we need to be looking to hit singles and doubles, all right? It means that we need to be out there looking to recruit small businesses. We need to be targeting locations where there's either abandoned or underutilized buildings, as opposed to ripping up open space and putting up brand-new facilities while we have these old hulks not doing anything, okay? And making smart decisions. One of the things that I think needs to be a real focus is right choice, right place, okay? A lot of times it seems like we have great opportunities and then they get put in a place where it doesn't make sense. So when we bring a new business in, do you just put them at the most convenient location that they choose, or do you make sure that you're going through all the different opportunities for locations in town so that they end up in a good location and that they're not necessarily going to be butting up against neighborhoods where there's communities that you don't necessarily want a brewery right next door to a bunch of houses with people that have kids or, you know, elderly or things like that. So we need to be very conscious about how we make that choice and how we guide those businesses so they end up in the right place within town.
Rebuttal, go ahead.
Yes, if I could. I agree wholeheartedly with what Brandy and Adam has said, along with Jane. One of the concerns on 126 corridor is conservation land. There is a ton of it. And unless we decide to change our conservation rules and regulations, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can build down there. It's incredible. I don't have to tell you. You drive down there, you see the bogs. I mean, they're on both sides of the street. So you're limited to where you can actually generate a nice commercial building that's gonna, one, be receptive to everybody, and especially those that are gonna be working within that building. So you're kind of limited, unless you want to go back to square one and knock everything down again and try it again, but that's not really going to happen. It won't happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yolanda Greaves, 127 Prospect Street. And if possible, I'd like all 6 candidates to answer this question. It's the same one I asked of the earlier group. You are individuals who will be sitting on a board, and some of you are incumbents, some of you are new, or you've sat on other boards. How will you work with your board if you have a disagreement and the vote or the decision does not match what you think is appropriate?
Okay, so let's start with Tricia and just run the table. Go ahead.
I was here for when they asked this question earlier, and to me, it's just such a natural part of life. You know, teams, very rarely are you in any situation where you're the sole decision maker on any kind of significant project. So in what I do every day, there's a team of people involved in every building project. And you get a variety of opinions, a variety of points of view coming from different angles, and you kind of hash out what the right solution is. So actually, I think it's really a natural thing and not really a challenge.
Kate?
I think you actually would seek disagreement. I think you get better decisions when you get more input, and I think that's what you're looking for. And then you have a process that, you know, reconciles that. Like, people can disagree and still get along and still get their work done and still give a final product, you know, along the way. I worked, this was quite a few years ago, on the Citizens Participation Committee with the ARA, and I think that everybody on there for many issues had different priorities, different agendas, and we were able to, you know, follow the process, follow open meeting laws, follow timely submission of agendas and minutes, and get our work done. So I think at work, I actually train my new hires to question people all the way up to the president as needed, because I think if they have a better idea or another angle to look at, I think you want that. So I would welcome disagreement. I think it's part of the process.
Thank you, Kate. Jane?
The candidates received a list of possible questions, one of which you haven't asked, but I'm going to incorporate it into this answer. And the question was, if you could create a superhero to be on the board, who would it be and why? And it was a real easy answer for me. The superhero is my dad. And the reason being, my dad was chief ballistics specialist for the United States government, for the U.S. Army. He worked with presidents. He worked with five-star generals. He worked with, contractors, and machinists and all the people that create the armament for the people in Vietnam, for the troops in Vietnam. He treated everyone with the same level of respect. He put his ego aside and treated everyone the same. And that's the way I was raised. I was raised to agree to disagree, to put my ego aside, and to listen respectfully to others.
Thank you, Jane. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jane, I couldn't agree with you any more. What you just said is absolutely correct. And for those who have sat on the board or are currently sitting on the board, that's how I've operated for the past 9 years, respecting everybody else's opinion, and they're respecting ours, respecting mine. We may agree to disagree, and that's okay. You have 5 individuals, they're going to have 5 individual opinions, and you work to compromise. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to move the town forward in a positive direction. You need to make sure that the site that you have and the goals that you're looking for are not your own individuals, but the town inclusively as why you're working together. You put your petty differences aside, you put your biases aside, and you ask yourself, what is the best for the town as a whole? And you work on that, and if you work on that premise, you'll be very successful. And I think over the 9 years, the several boards that I've sat with as a board member, we've done that. Have we learned to agree to disagree? Absolutely. I mean, I had a very good friend on the board, and, you know, we've had our differences. But at the end of the day, and the end of the night, we walked out and we were still friends. That hasn't changed, nor will it ever change. I guess that's a sign of maturity. And it goes a long way. Because the only thing is that we all need to do collectively, whoever wins the selection, is to make sure that you do what's best for the town. Not what you think is best for the town, but what the town believes is best. And keep listening to your constituents. Because remember, you are representing them. You're not representing yourself. You're representing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy?
So I would say that 2 of my real strengths are collaboration and communication, which I think are essential for any board position, but especially for the Board of Selectmen. I think that having someone that can work well with others and has a deep relationship with both town management in general and personal relationships with the individual Board of Selectmen members is vitally important. I think that if you start from a place knowing that the board members are putting the needs of the town above each individual agenda, I think if you make that assumption where that is your starting point, I think you can always agree to disagree. I think you can always have a respectful conversation. And I've worked with many groups in town and at work, and I've worked in a very male-dominated field where you need to have your voice heard. And I have always had a respectful relationship with every single person I've ever worked with. I was part of the Corner Spot team, and we were a group of 6 women that all had an equal voice in how we were creating this very special community spot. And we didn't always agree, but I think that what we created out of nothing was huge. So I think collaboration is a very, very, very big component of this position, and I think having a strong communication style also helps as well. And I'm told to stop.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Roberta. You know, healthy debate is a really good thing. It indicates passion, it indicates caring. It means that the people there are invested in what's going on. That's great. That's not the same as personal attacks. That's not what we want, because that's destructive as opposed to being constructive. You know, as president of the Education Foundation, we have a 15-member board, and I guarantee you we don't agree all the time. The Finance Committee, we have a 7-member committee. We don't agree all the time. I will say, much to Joe's credit, the Finance Committee and the Education Foundation, when the vote's over, everybody goes home and everybody's a friend and everybody's happy, okay? You look at the warrant articles that are coming up in May, I can tell you for sure the Finance Committee was not unanimous in its vote on every one of those articles. Doesn't happen, okay? Everybody gets a chance to express their opinion. That means you need to be a good listener. It means that as a leader, you need to be a good facilitator, because you need to make sure that everybody gets their chance to express their opinion, that they're heard, that other people aren't overrunning them or interrupting them. and that you can continue to move the conversation forward and drive towards a consensus. It's about collaboration and teamwork, and that's all what this is about, right? It's getting people to come to a decision together, maybe it's not unanimous, and moving forward in a productive manner.
Thank you. And for our final question of the evening.
Thank you. My name is Diane Ring from Bay Colony Drive. I need to drag us from the visionary down into the weeds for a moment. Follow-on question for Brandy, and if anybody else wants to chime in and time permits. With regard to your vision for the economic corridor on 126, I think you said that you wanted to take a look at the zoning, and I just wanted a few more details about what that might look like for you and anyone else if there's time. Thank you.
So I think we need to, like I said, take a look at the zoning. Look at the, if there's wetlands that are affected, we don't want to go through the wetlands. We don't want to disturb that. And that is something that's personally very important to me. But I do think that we need to look at maybe mixed use on 126. We need to have that support of because it's to have a developer develop just commercial use may or may not actually work for that space. So, I mean, I know that there was a developer that had a neighborhood meeting on 126, the old Fusion spot, not too long ago, and I know that there was some pushback from the residents, the local residents, but I do think that developer is really looking to work with the community. So I think we need to look at things like that, to bring in developers that want to work with Ashland. And as far as the zoning goes, we need to kind of have a holistic look at it and see what makes sense for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to take that question?
I'd like to piggyback what Brandy just said, because I was there at that meeting when the developer made his presentation to the neighborhood. Yes, and there was pushback, and there was legitimate reasons as to why. The size of the building was kind of out there. It was, to me, I thought it was larger than it needed to be. The number of units, living units, were not actually desirable. He could have easily have gone down to 15 units, which would have made it part of the overlay a little bit better, and that hasn't happened. But he hasn't shut down. His ears are still open. He hasn't made any decisions if he's going to continue this. I know that he wants to get back with the neighborhoods again, neighborhood residents again, and sit down and talk with them again to get more input. I know that the board will be sitting, members of the board will be sitting with some of these neighbors with respect to that, and hopefully we can work something out. Now, if it can't be worked out, he's the type of individual that told me the following day when I went back to walk the site that he was, if he had to, he wasn't going to do a 40B, because that was a concern that I had. The biggest thing that I didn't want to see was put this beautiful corridor down 126, and then the first thing people see is a 40B project. To me, is not viable. Even though we're looking for affordable housing, that's not the type of affordable housing that I was looking for, or that we were looking for collectively. So, with respect to that, I just hope he keeps his mind open and is willing to work for the town to get a project in there that would be beneficial for everybody and make the residents feel comfortable with the size and its location. So, thank you.
Thank you. Adam, did you?
Sure.
I thought you wanted to say something.
So first, I'd like to applaud the builder for actively engaging with the community and the neighborhood. That's certainly something that we haven't seen enough of, and we should be encouraging with the builders. The other thing I'd say is we need to do a better job of constantly reevaluating our zoning. If you've driven down 135 and seen that monstrosity that's going up in front of the middle school, yeah, okay, right? Why is it going up? Because our zoning allowed it, okay? So we need to do a better job and encourage the zoning board to do regular reviews of the townwide zoning to make sure that we're zoning all of our areas of town the way we want them to be. And to make sure that, hey, if we don't want those type of facilities to be constructed in front of a school, that our zoning is adjusted accordingly. Because if it's not, when the builder shows up, our hands are tied, okay? So I think we can get ahead of some of these types of issues by making sure that we're proactive with our zoning evaluation and doing that job to make sure that everything is the way we want it to be.
Thank you. Jane, did you have something?
I do. First of all, I'd like to thank you for not asking the superhero question, because I don't know that I could have gotten through it again. But I do agree with the panel, and I think that it's imperative that we do thorough research before deciding anything. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that we take every piece of land that's available and put a 5-story office building up, or whatever. Obviously, it goes without saying that we have to research it thoroughly and make sure, as you said, that that there's a right fit. So I strongly encourage research, and more research before we jump in with both feet. And thanks for not asking that question.
Thank you. Before we have the candidates do their closing remarks, just want to do final thank yous again to We Love Ashland, Friends of the Ashland Public Library, the Ashland Public Library, WACA, all the audience participants, everyone who was watching at home, and all of our candidates from Part 1 and Part 2 this evening. Want to also remind folks that Green Up Ashland Day is May 4th on Saturday from 9 to 12 at Stone Park. Town meeting is Wednesday, May 1st at 7 p.m. at Ashland High School. And voting in the town election is Tuesday, May 21st. Okay? They are all civic responsibilities. And we are going to do the closing remarks in the reverse order from the way we started with the opening remarks. So Jane, if you could start us off. And there's 1 minute, and we're really close to closing time, so we're going to stick to that 1 minute.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and taking an interest in town government. It's very important that we all do that. Our priorities should always remain supporting our police, our fire, our education, and our basic infrastructure of the town to make town what it is today and what it's always been, hopefully for the future for our children. At the end of the day, Ashland still ranks 197. I said it before, out of 351 cities and towns for tax rate. That concerns me. That's always concerned me. And you're right, just quality of what you get, and I wouldn't live here if I didn't think the quality was fabulous. But I still think we need to work on the tax rate. We need to take a long, hard look at where the money's being spent and make sure we allocate it appropriately, so that Ashland residents don't continue to bear the burden of the high taxes and fees, by the way. We need some relief. That's the bottom line. If elected, I'm going to focus my efforts on making this a top priority. And I ask for your vote on May 21st. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I've lived in Ashland for 63 years, a lifelong resident. Raised my family. My children were raising their families here. I have grandchildren that are in school, senior in high school, and a kindergartner ready to make his impact in the schools. And I pity them all. I wish that I had to do this all over again. 10 years ago, I said I wanted to be the voice of the people. I continue saying that. I will continue to be the voice of the people. I'm very proud of what we've done in 9 years. I want to continue to add on to the achievements and keep Ashland focused for the future in a positive, creative way. And I couldn't have been able to do this without the support and appreciation of a young lady that's sitting out there that has been my best friend for 38 years. And that's my wife, Donna. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your support. And my campaign manager, who's like my older brother, Bill Gath. Thank you for all that you've done for me. You've helped me make Ashland a better place, and I want to continue doing that. And I ask for your support on May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Brandy?
Thank you all for being here today, and for those watching at home on WACA. And thank you all for your really thoughtful questions. It gives us a different way of thinking about things, which is always really good. I hope tonight you've gotten a good sense of who I am and my thoughts and my priorities, and the direction that I really want to take Ashland in, especially around the areas of economic development, communication, and really engaging our community and really creating this culture of volunteerism. You have a choice to make in this election, and you need to decide what kind of community we want to build. I want to continue the positive momentum that we've seen in recent years. I have a deep love of this community, its people and its organizations that just make this a really great place to live. And above all, I know what's possible in this town. I know firsthand what happens when a group of people get together and create the corner spot. And it's not even just the 6 of us, it was really a whole community effort. Or what the, or how the community rallied with the Duca Silver family. And so I know what is possible. And so I ask for your vote on May 21st. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you to everyone for coming out tonight and listening to all of our thoughts and opinions. By engaging with and in listening to our stakeholders, the Ashland Board of Selectmen can make decisions that are most beneficial for our town. While we may not always agree as to the best solution, I promise to always be open to your thoughts and ideas, finding creative solutions so that the needs of our residents are met and budgetary impact upon the taxpayers are minimized. As many of you know, my campaign slogan is "Moving Ashland Forward Together." The word "together" is the most meaningful to me because it clearly states that we must be a fully inclusive community, and as we continue to move Ashland forward together, we must make sure that we leave no one behind. If I'm elected to the board, I pledge to listen and be open to ideas, strive to remove roadblocks from our town's progress and growth, create the environment that fosters long-term success for everyone in our town. Based on my experience, I believe I'm the right candidate for the job. My name is Adam Elbert. I'm asking you for one of your 2 votes for selectmen on May 21st. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.